Good morning. I'm Sean Buck. I'm the new president of the National Training and Simulation Association, better known as NTSA. I want to welcome you to this session of our 2024 NTSA webinar series. This webinar is going to be an exciting one for us. It's going to provide you with a sneak peek preview of ITSEC 2024. Our theme for this year's ITSEC is Assuring Deterrence through Integrated Training and Readiness. The time is now. The technology for modeling and simulation is changing rapidly, as we well know, while the need for training remains mission critical. We're excited to provide you with some insights on things to look forward to at this year's conference. For those of you all new to NTSA, we're a nonprofit association dedicated to facilitating dialogue between government, industry, and academia on topics related to providing the best possible training and training systems for our warfighters and our first responders. We host a portfolio of events each year, the last of which is ITSEC, the largest training and simulation conference and exposition of its kind in the entire world. We're excited to offer this exclusive opportunity to interact with the ITSEC service executives in the run-up to this year's ITSEC in early December. Today's presentation will highlight the service's thoughts on the future of training, the technologies that are drawing them to the floor at this time, and the issues that are top of mind for them as they assign the staff to explore what is out there for training and education. The way we'll run the webinar today, following the panel's opening remarks, we will answer the questions that you all provided in advance and attempt to address those that you sent in today through the system. Due to the limitations of each of these panel members' time, I've assured them that we'll not exceed 1 hour. Additionally, they won't be addressing specific questions related to specific programs. Instead, they'll be providing remarks on the key technologies that they're targeting this year that can enhance the capabilities for the future for their respective service. Now, please allow me to first introduce all the members of our panel that you see displayed on the screen. This is a Navy and Marine Corps-led year for the ITSEC conference, so I'll start out with the Navy and the Marine Corps reps. First, Captain Tim James. Captain James has been in command of the Navy Air Warfare Center Training Systems Division, or known as NOC-TSD, as well as the Naval Support Activity in Orlando since June of 2023. In this role, he leads a multi-billion-dollar portfolio and the management of the Navy's training system programs in aviation, unmanned systems, surface and subsurface, research, and special operations. Next is Colonel Marcus Reynolds. Colonel Reynolds is the program manager for training systems, or better known as PM TRACIS, in the United States Marine Corps. He's the executive agent assigned to manage acquisition and lifecycle support of Marine Corps ground training systems, devices, and training support services. He commands a staff of nearly 180 professionals, including Marines, civilians, and support contractors globally, across program management, engineering, design, logistics, and support. New to our service executive leadership is the U.S. Space Force. Colonel Corey Klopstein is the Program Executive Officer for Operational Test and Training Infrastructure for Space Systems Command. In this role, he leads the execution of a $4 billion portfolio of advanced systems that provide the foundation for high-end advanced test, training, and tactics development by all Guardians. Colonel Carlos Quinones is the fourth service executive with us today. He is the acting Program Executive Officer for Training for the U.S. Air Force. He leads a team of 600 members, executing a $5.8 billion portfolio for training systems design, development, and sustainment. He manages these programs across 9 commands of the U.S. Air Force as well as for our international partners. And last but not least, next is the Army's service leader. Brigadier General Christine Beeler is the Program Executive Officer of the U.S. Army Program Executive Office for Simulation, Training, and Instrumentation, as we all know, PEO STRI. They're headquartered in Orlando, along with the other services along Naval Support Activity Orlando. PEO STRI is staffed by more than 1,200 military, civilian, and support contract professionals who together manage a multi-billion-dollar portfolio of training, test, and threat development and management. Please welcome our leadership to this event. Each of our service leaders will first provide their thoughts on their hard problems in the future of training and what they seek relative to technologies on the floor of ITSEC that can help them to meet these challenges. We will then have an open and casual dialogue based on the questions that you all have submitted prior to and during this webinar. So first, I'd like to go back to Captain Tim James. Over to you, Captain James, for your opening remarks.
All right, thank you, Admiral. Pleased to be here to represent the Navy. Always daunting to get in front of this ecosystem, steeped in knowledge and longevity in this area. This being my 7th ITSEC, I think I'm just now allowed to not call myself the new guy. Really appreciate being in the ecosystem with that kind of depth of knowledge in the area. So 3 areas. Let me start with the Navy's big problem on training right now. As highlighted by the CNO in our NAV plan rollout under Project 33, training like we fight, highlighting LVC is the number one thing on our ticket. But in order to get there, I'm looking for 3 very specific technology areas, and I'm always open and thrilled when there's some kind of surprise on the floor of ITSEC or somebody has sign the NDA and go to the hotel room thing. So that's that 4th wild card that I'm always open to. But the first thing, artificial intelligence. Everybody is talking about it. We're looking for good ways to use it, not just in LVC and simulation, but in the business of business too. Which I'd like to point out, we've got a prize challenge we're going to award on the floor of ITSEC for how to use artificial intelligence to help us evaluate proposals. So last year we did one to create proposals. Now we're going to do one to evaluate them. So artificial intelligence is the first thing I'll be looking for. Second is the mixed or extended reality devices. As we're trying to capitalize on Murphy's Law to kind of collapse the cost and footprint of simulators and be able to put them places we never have, like our Sims at Sea program. Always looking for the different types of extended or mixed reality, what the next progression, the next state of the art is on those devices so that we can roll those in and get more for the same dollar or more for a smaller footprint. And then the third one, which is the least sexy, but the one I really like to harp on the most, having been caught in this numerous times in the Navy, is anything that supports the infrastructure behind this. We've got all kinds of operational plans with these magic lightning bolts that make all these simulators work, but nobody really focuses on that. They always glom onto the devices. So I'm interested in anything that helps us with our bandwidth problems, our cyber problems, areas like that. So anything that supports the infrastructure of getting this LVC problem out there to the fleet, highly looking to get smart on and try and steer the Navy's investments towards, because that seems to be the thing that we always neglect until it fails, and then we can't fully get the bang for the buck out of the devices that we buy. So sir, with that, I will pass it on to the next presenter so we can get to the questions, the most important part of this.
Thanks, Tim. We appreciate that specificity for the Navy. Next, I'll once again introduce Colonel Marcus Reynolds for the Marine Corps perspective. Colonel Reynolds, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we kick off our discussions for ITSEC 2024. I have the pleasure of being this year's co-lead with Captain James, and we're hoping for this to be the best ITSEC year ever. And as you probably saw on the back of Captain James's board there, we had to echo that as Go Navy, Beat Army. Okay, so we are on the brink of transformation in our military training and simulation, particularly with the Marine Corps. As outlined from the Commandant's planning guidance called Force Design, we are challenged to modernize warfare through innovations and solutions that our training systems are continually evolving. And it's hard to keep up with that with how fast technology changes. So very excited about this year's ITSEC for us to be able to get out there and see what's the changes that have happened just over the last year. I know this is my third ITSEC, and my first year was pretty overwhelming, but just to see the leap and what technology did just from that first year to the second year was very amazing. And then what we're trying to get after in the Marine Corps, having that opportunity to get out there and engage with industry really helps us move the needle for getting after and solving some of our hardest problems. I mean, the Marine Corps has always been at the forefront of military innovation, and our training systems are no exception. From live training exercises to advanced simulations, from technologies that we're committed to enhancing the readiness and effectiveness of our Marines in a joint warfighting force. So we have some key focus areas for this year for us. We're very interested in synthetic training environments, as Captain James is getting after the same thing we are. We're looking at adaptive learning technologies and integration with joint forces. So we're really changing our efforts this year to leverage the joint tools from a JSJ7. And what's that mean for industry? There's a lot of tools and gaps within there that we need to get after. And so that's going to be a focus effort for us. So during ITSEC, my team and I will conduct market research on the progress of AI capabilities, driver trainers, and technology that would benefit our current programs of record. I will place special emphasis on how AI can support Marine Corps exercises and execution, operating our Red Cell operation, thanking enemy, and supporting our wargaming capability. I will also ask our industry partners to provide real-world examples of how their technology can get after some of the Marine Corps training efforts, and outline supportability of leveraging AI to support Marine Corps training needs, such as the capability of AI advisors and role players. In closing, I want to thank all of you for being part of this important conversation. Your expertise and insight are invaluable as we navigate the complexity of military training and seek to ensure the utmost readiness of our forces. I look forward to our discussion today and at ITSEC 2024. Together, let's shape the future of Marine Corps training systems. Thank you.
Thanks, Colonel Reynolds. Appreciate it. Colonel Klopstein, you have unique challenges as the newest of the services. Please share your thoughts with us.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Thanks. I appreciate you guys having the Space Force as a part of this. We were at ITSEC last year, but I was a brand new PEO as of October 1st of 2023. So we probably didn't have as much of a presence or footprint out there. That is going to change this year. I know that General Sheba from Space Training and Readiness Command is going to be there with me as well. We look forward to getting out there to industry. We just had a Space Industry Days a couple of weeks ago, but this is a much broader a group of industry partners. So we're really looking forward to getting out there and engaging with you guys. From the Space Force side, just to help you understand where we're coming from and what things have changed for us. The space domain has really changed from a benign to a contested environment. Our training previously was really focused on proficiency of operating a system and ensuring that that system can be capable at all times. But as we change from a benign to a contested environment, that has changed what we need from a training standpoint. We've got to be able to provide combat credible forces. And as that environment has changed, our standards for readiness have changed. And the CSO has emphasized this across the board since he's been in the seat, that readiness is his top priority. We've got to have Guardians that can gain and maintain space superiority, control the domain, not just operate in the domain. And so what we've seen from a training standpoint is an increase in funding from the service, increase in requirements, and a change in requirements. The demand from Space Operations Command, from Space Training Readiness Command, and from Space Systems Command has been an increase in capacity and an increase in capability just across the board. And then I'll also tell you that our CSO and our SAE have emphasized speed and execution. We've got to make sure that we've got our forces ready to present as quickly as possible. We're not in the same position as the other services have been and been training in these contested environments. And so we've got a long way to go in a very short period of time. So from a speed standpoint, I would say that our focus is on capitalizing on existing systems and integrating them to ensure that we've got cross-mission area training. And then from an execution standpoint, we're going to look to leverage any types of acquisition vehicles that are out there to deliver training capabilities, any capabilities that industry can bring to bear that we can integrate into a larger OTTI ecosystem. From a technology standpoint, I'll echo the demand from the Navy for AI. I don't just want to say AI and walk away as a buzzword. Specifically, what we want to be able to do is have AI operated blue systems and red systems so that Guardians can go in and train at any time in the environment, the OTTI environment. And then we're also looking for digital engineering, not just from an engineering standpoint, but also blue and red models to be able to replicate our space systems and red threats out there so that our Guardians can train in the most realistic and effective way. So I'm looking forward to getting out there and meeting with you guys this year at ITSEC. Look forward to the questions and appreciate you guys having us.
Thanks, Colonel. Colonel Quinones, can you share with your thoughts relative to the Air Force, the training and the technologies that you all are seeking in this year's ITSEC?
Absolutely. Thank you. And good morning, everybody. The Air Force is going through a significant transformation with regards to how we look at training. So many of you probably heard how the Secretary Kendall and the rest of the Air Force leadership is being telling us that we need to be ready for a near-peer type of scenario where some of the capabilities and systems that we've been using and some of the assumptions that we've been operating under are not going to be present under this near-peer environment. And because of those changes and because of those pressures, one of the great big things that happened recently is the creation of PEO training. And PEO training is basically taking the formal Agile Combat Support PEO and then giving them a specific focus area, which is training. And within that, we are looking at the full spectrum and a complete integration on the vertical side from aircraft to ground systems to networks and to all the other tools available to us in order to ensure that our operators, our pilots, and our warfighters are ready to engage in this very challenging environment. So with that, within that purpose, and without that construct, then what is it that the Air Force is looking as we move forward? For us, it's speed to ramp. We don't have the flexibility and we cannot afford to take years in order to be able to provide the equipment and the training, the system that our team needs to go and execute the mission. So instead of concentrating on these big systems, now we're looking more at a family of systems where we can actually execute the full mission from dedicated training aircraft to the joint simulation environment where we have high fidelity activities for the full training simulators into a smaller type of simulators and tools that will allow us to get the job done, but to get these tools to the user as soon as possible and also maintain us, allow us to be current with the system that the operator will fly at the end. So the only way we do that is by, number one, ensuring that we have a good set of tools and we are leveraging all the actual technology out there for us to get that. So AI, multiple visual tools, XR or extended reality, virtual reality, all these tools are something that PEO training will go and leverage in order to ensure that our systems are ready to go and that we can provide these capabilities. And I will end with one piece. As we actually now have this focused PEO training, the other thing that we actually able to do is now look for enterprise solutions. Instead of the stovepipe specific solution for a specific platforms or systems, now we're looking across to doing integration of all our tools to ensure that we can leverage our dollars and utilize tools in multiple locations for multiple uses. So we're looking for those opportunities where a system, a tool can be applied across the enterprise. I think ITSEC will be a great venue to explore all these possibilities. We have a great representation from Air Force leadership. We'll be supporting up to 10 panels. Right now I'm tracking, and I think it will be a great conversation between industry, our partners and other services, and our current team to be able to see what is in the realm of the possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Colonel Quinones. That's a great intro setup. Appreciate it. Last but not least, General Beeler, as the lead service last year for ITSEC, we welcome your thoughts as you look to the future of Army training in your new role as the PEO. Over to you.
Hey, sir, and thanks NTSA for this opportunity, this quick look as we dive headfirst into the NTSA and ITSEC 2024 conference. I'm struck by how common the theme from last month's Association of the United States Army's meeting, Transforming for a Complex World, and the ITSEC theme of assuring deterrence through integrated training and readiness really describe the need for adaptation, preparation, and integration of advanced technologies to enhance their training and our operational effectiveness. You know, as fun and exciting as new tech and kit might be, we can't forget that at the center of all of this is the human. The human is the critical constituent that's going to bring all of this great kit to bear on the battlefield. And so as we think about, you know, how do we provide the expertise to make to these humans, to these leaders and soldiers to make critical decisions and ensure effective implementation and maintenance of these technologies, I think ITSEC's going to be very informative for us as we look around the floor. You know, everything PEO strives to do, again, starts with the soldier and the team, from the private to the general. And our training products, while they have currently provided a lot of bloodless opportunities to train, rehearse, test, innovate, and experiment with new kit, formations, doctrine, and techniques, you know, the increasing effectiveness of the Army's lethality, our products have kind of started to create some negative training effects that we currently do, you know, workarounds to mitigate. But, you know, as we think about our current suite, you know, the complexity, they really haven't kept pace with the complexity of the live virtual constructive environments that are out there. Certainly the nuances of great power competition in all 5 domains, you know, and the ability to train and direct maneuver in a joint interagency and intergovernmental or multinational situation, whether in competition, crisis, or conflict. I think that's really where there's a big gap, right? How are we training formations at the higher echelons? And so, you know, critical thinking, creative thinking of the human can absolutely be enhanced by technology to reduce the cognitive load, really to challenge our assumptions, to provide options based on desired outcomes, and enhance situational understanding, and really to evaluate what are second and third order effects of our decisions, whether it's diplomatic, informational, military, or economic. How do we see those play out across our actions and the actions of others, whether they're state or non-state actors? And so, you know, really the ability to out-train, out-think, and out-maneuver the opposition is what creates the cost-benefit calculus that assures deterrence. So here at Stride, we are working very hard in lockstep to prioritize our project schedules and release features that are most critical to the customer, and then off-ramp non-critical product features that may not be ready for prime time, right? So that we can maintain schedule and get the biggest bang for our buck and achieve quick wins across our training environment. You know, we're assessing new technologies. We're working hand in glove with our partners across all the PEOs and across the DevCom and science and technology community, really to get at what do we think the future of multi-domain training and testing looks like. Our top priorities remain including wireless intelligence networks, instrumentation of autonomous platforms, optics, AI-enabled simulation, and non-kinetic modeling to really look at how do we look at EW, cyber, and intel. You know, modernization is clearly our biggest business model, and we're really looking at how we achieve the acquisition process in that space. We're looking to make sure that we can enable innovators to be profitable, that we can enable startups to compete for various Stride opportunities. And we're embedding agility, not just in how we buy, but how we shape our contracts so that our vendors have the ability to be agile inside the contract, to off-ramp from things that aren't proving out and to on-ramp to take care of, to achieve opportunities as they present themselves. And so when we think about all of the things that go on with Sybers, TechGrove, TechBridge, and Linchpin, which is a PEO IEW&S program, those are going to give us the ability to reach out and look at those of you out there who are innovators. As we think about Unite, which is a product lead office we've stood up, it's about looking out across all of our portfolios. We believe there's convergence in all of that when we talk about common architecture, governance, and processes. That's really one of the things we ultimately want people to understand, as well as on the 13th of November, we're having our industry day on how we expect to do convergence in all of this space. So technology-wise, we are absolutely interested in, modeling and simulation as a service. How do we look at bringing on board, whether it's AI tools, whether it's analytic tools, not only to progress the tools that we have today, all the legacy stuff, but how do we bring that all together as we move forward in the future? So I look forward to the floor at ITSEC and really getting a chance to see what's out there and what we can take advantage of. Thank you.
Thanks, General. That was a good, thought-provoking context you gave us in those intro remarks. Thank you for that, and appreciate it. Hey, I see on my webinar screen, I show 131 of us dialed in. I want to thank everyone. We got 133 questions submitted before we all logged in, for all 5 of the services. So thank you all for submitting your questions. They're all very, very good. With that, I'd like to kick it off. I'm going to head back to Captain James with the first question for the Navy. Captain James, you're being asked, how do we avoid falling into the trap that AI is the answer to everything?
That's right. As mentioned in my kickoff from Mark's AI, that you can't have a sentence about training or modeling in sim without somebody throwing AI in there. And there's the tendency to misuse it, right? I look at AI as a tool. It's a technology, just that. It is not a solution in and of itself. So we do have numerous projects going on to work at this hard problem before Big Navy can address it, because that's what we do as a Warfare Center. We try and lead those discussions. But learning how to use and trust AI. For instance, if you're in a cockpit in a dogfight and it's a very stressful situation, there's a very specific sweet spot of when you want to listen to Hal talking in your ear. You don't want to blindly follow whatever it says and lose situational awareness as to what's going on. You also don't want to completely disregard it because it's doing a lot of computation in the background. So we do have some researchers working both on our own and with some local small businesses out here in Orlando, trying to figure out that exact problem set. How do we use it the way it's supposed to, not take the brain out of the loop, lose all the benefit of having a person in or on the loop for AI decision making. And it's going to start with training, right? You've got to be able to train with AI before it shows up in a system. So from day one in the near future, whether it's something as simple as ChatGPT or gets more advanced of AI getting in there and trying to recommend moves for yourself in your simulator or controlling the bad guys, et cetera, we're going to start ingraining how to use AI properly as a tool to our most junior officers and sailors, so that by the time they're getting to that high-end training set and then out in the operational world, they know exactly how to use it the right way and not just forfeit all of the decision-making to them. So we just have, the US's robots fighting the other countries' robots, and we've taken all the humanity out of it. So we are definitely focused on that, sir.
Exactly. You're spot on, Captain. Hey, I'm going to go over to the Space Force. There's a specific question for you all. How are modeling and simulation environments being used to train Guardians today?
So there's a couple of different areas that we're looking to leverage modeling and sim. Right now, we're using it for large force exercises. So our space flags and what we're calling some Scarlet Stars, we're trying to use modeling and sim, use blue models and red models to replicate systems and have our Guardians interact with those. I think from our standpoint, whether that's the things that we're using now or what we're going to do in the future, it's going to be a key part of what the Space Force needs to do for both test and training. There are things that we've got to test that we know that we're not going to be able to do on orbit all the time. There are ways that we're going to have to train that we're not going to be able to do with live assets every time. We've got to have the most realistic blue representations of our systems or red representations of the threats that we know are impacting our systems and our ability to operate in the space domain. And so for us, modeling and sim is going to be key to being able to provide the right type of test and training systems for our guardians, and to be able to plug into the joint force so that we're providing the right effects in large force exercises that bring in the other domains. And so it's going to be a key aspect of what we do from a technological standpoint. We need to grow from where we are, understanding the synthetic environments for our digital piece, and how it interacts for live over sim is going to be really important as well. So we look forward to partnering with industry to come up with some key solutions and enable that for the Space Force.
Thanks, Colonel Kopstein. Appreciate it. Colonel Reynolds, from a Marine Corps point of view, how do you see the growth of AI in modeling and simulation? Is there anything that really sticks out that might be a little different than what your other colleagues have suggested already?
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, I see tremendous potential for AI creating the dynamic generative adversary forces. So as we have a thinking enemy that can challenge commanders as they go out to our different exercises, there's been a lot of exercises where it could be a kind of a canned scenario, and you kind of get like, hey, this is the answer, and you march on like the check in the blocks. But actually having AI to be able to assist in those designs for those exercises, and actually part of it as the thinking red cell that can change based on past experiences. So one battalion commander may go through the exercise and is able to see success off of certain methods during the exercise. And then if the next battalion commander goes through and sees the same scenario and starts to go into that, they might not see success, and they'll have to use critical thinking to basically overcome those changes on the battlefield, because we have a thinking enemy out there in the real world, and we have to be able to adjust to them, and basically updating our training to be able to go after something like that that's as dynamic as a thinking enemy. I think can be very helpful to get after. I believe I've messed with different AI tools out there, just seeing the changes that will be put in there as I keep iterating on it, and it's pretty impressive how that changes through it. And so actually getting a tool that we can use for our exercises, I think is very important for us, and that's one of the focus areas I'll be looking at when we're at ITSEC.
Super. Thanks, Colonel. Hey, over to the Air Force. Colonel Quinones, there was a very specific question pointed toward the Air Force, and you actually began to touch on it in your opening remarks. The question for you talks about PEO training. That represents a completely new approach for the Air Force. How will PEO training help accelerate readiness through training?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So PEO training, as I kind of mentioned in my initial remarks, is definitely a shift on how we done training in the Air Force for a long time, and I think there's multiple benefits to this approach. But I believe at the top of that is the fact that you have a focused provider of training capabilities, then that is responsible to supply all the users what they need in order to meet the demand, in order to get ready for whatever mission they need to execute. So that specific focus approach combined with a clear vertical integration. So now when I build a simulator, or I have a family of systems that provide that simulator capability, then it's also lined up to be able to be supported with the aircraft or the networks in which the aircraft the simulators are training, and they allow us to be able to use our dollars wisely, be able to invest in areas in which can be capitalized across multiple mission sets in the Air Force. So bringing a dedicated function, the authorities and dollars that are going to be going after training solutions, it will allow us to actually expand what we produce, develop the capabilities that are needed, and ensure that what we provide is a solution, a timely solution to the training needs of our warfighter.
Thanks, Colonel. Over to Army, General Beeler. We've got, so far as we march toward ITSEC, we've got a really good registration. Lots of members of industry coming. who are going to be super interested in talking to all of you all. One question that seemed to stick out for the Army that they want to hear from you are, what are some of the key technologies or innovations that you're prioritizing at this year's ITSEC, especially in terms of how modeling, simulation, or generative AI will impact training and readiness across all branches of the Army?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And, as I listen to my colleagues, we're more similar and alike than we are different in that space. As we think about how do we instrument maritime, land, and air training collectively, how do we bring together, electronic warfare capabilities into the live, virtual, and constructive, and how do we do that across all of those areas? The technologies that are going to allow us to get there are obviously going to be, making sure we have a good architecture strategy and that we're able to bring in both iterative and generative AI, that we can think about how do we talk to and have the depth of our blue force, but also the depth of understanding what the red force is and being able to control the red force on the other side. I think our ability as we continue to bring the test community and the training community closer together, we're going to find that there are added benefits of operating collectively on a similar network, on a similar architecture, so we can share those lessons learned back and forth across those areas. Other things in the technology area we're certainly looking for is how do we replicate individual weapon platforms or enemy platforms, or even how civilians act on the battlefield. How do we replicate that in a sufficient depth that it stimulates the user, whether they're a company commander, a battalion commander, or a theater commander in that space? And so, that's why we're looking at plugging in individual components into our core architecture, so that we'll build out the architecture and people can bring those innovative ways of modeling and simulating what happens on the real battlefield, what people really might do into that space. And then, ultimately looking at how do we look at data analytics to be more informed of how we're doing this process, from acquisition to sustainment and logistics of all of our training platforms. As we build a single reference architecture and bring all of our software products together in one repository, the ability to make sure that is maintained and safe, that we remain true to the original models that have come in, that we're able to protect that, and then ultimately able to sustain that. At the end of the day, it's going to be all of those stuff, and how much does it cost to do that? And I think that's part of what we're really looking at, is not just the technology of the pieces and parts, but how do we sustain that, and how do we continue to maintain that as we move forward. Over.
Thank you. I'm going to turn back to the Space Force. Question for the Space Force: what are the benefits for the government to leverage COTS, or commercial off-the-shelf solutions?
Well, I mean, obviously one of the first things is to be able to deliver capabilities as quick as possible. If there are things that are out there that we can leverage right now from a commercial standpoint and get them, to our Guardians and in their hands from a capability standpoint, that's probably the biggest benefit. I think the second thing from our standpoint is to, gain efficiencies and potentially lower costs, especially when it comes to space. We've got, some very expensive systems on our side. And if you can partner with commercial industry and you can have dual use of technologies, then that helps us collectively bring the cost down. Specifically for OTTI, one of the things that we are looking at to leverage on the commercial side is, range as a service capabilities. We just released an RFI on our Space Enterprise Consortium OTA about a month and a half ago. We got responses last week. We were looking to see if we could leverage any types of residual on-orbit assets, either as test or training capabilities, or ground assets that are out there. So, I think that there are some creative ways that we in the test and training community can leverage commercial that maybe we may not be able to do it on the space side for delivering actual capabilities. And so I want to see what's out there and push the boundary to see if there's anything that we can bring in and leverage as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Colonel. Appreciate that. Back over to our Navy brother, Captain James. Do you see a path for extended reality and wargaming for leadership and decision makers? In that regard, I've already been coordinating with Admiral Grady, our Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who will be joining us as a keynote speaker in a fireside chat at ITSEC. He has this as a question for himself also about using extended reality for senior decision makers. And then he also suggested even for budgeteers in charge of making budget and money decisions. Did I lose Captain James?
Yes, sir.
Colonel Reynolds, if I may, I'm going to turn to you while Captain James dials back in. The audience would like to know, what is the current status of Project Tripoli? How quickly are current systems transitioning? Over to you.
Thank you for the question. Project Tripoli represents TCOM's vision for integrating training across all MAGTF elements and with the sister services. The program of record supporting this vision, for which PM Trace's serves as an acquisition agent, is a Live Virtual Constructive Training Environment, LVCTE. We are actively collaborating with TCOM to advance development efforts using a joint Live Virtual Constructive Training architecture with a JS-J7, as well as our own tools. We are making steady progress in transitioning systems driven by our commitment to integrate advanced training technologies that support Marine Corps readiness. Through close coordination with TCOM and other partners, we continue to assess, refine, and deploy capabilities that align with Project Tripoli's vision.
Okay, we've got Captain James back. Captain, before we lost you, were you able to the audience question that I shared with you about using extended reality and wargaming for leadership and decision maker training? Over to you.
Yes, sir. I heard that. And then I heard just the name Admiral Grady, and it scared my IT system and it hung up. I'm assuming that he's a big fan of ours and he's here to congratulate us on our great work.
But yeah, what I wanted to add there is Admiral Grady, in discussions between he and I, he also is very interested to learn from ITSEC and talk about how we can use AI for training the most senior officers and even the budgeteers that work with money and make big budget decisions. Do you see a role from that from a Navy perspective?
Oh, all right, sir. Absolutely. This is a question we get a lot. So kind of the evolution of training that we've watched here over the decades in TSD is it was really easy to focus on the individual person training, right? Learn that part task trainer or that standalone simulator, et cetera. And then we thought we were all that in a bag of chips when we went to unit level training. So you have link your simulators or have a whole squadron, even to a whole air wing type fighting. But we found that we're still in the crawl stages of that we get a lot of questions about is in the force-wide training. So whether it's from SOCOM or I know the Marines have their wargaming center up and running now, but every major commander and staff have been asking about how they can do that, how they can leverage using the different reality modes, artificial intelligence, et cetera, but on their shoestring budget, because they didn't traditionally have this long training wedge of dollars set aside for them, so they can get better in what they do. Because if you ever sat in a large force exercise, call it simulation, it's disappointing when you see what we can do down all the way at the unit level. We're still using sand tables or moving little cutouts across the floor, things like that. There is absolutely room to use all of the technology here in Orlando for our senior-most leaders. And we are trying to get them to get those requirements on paper and get us the dollars moving, because we have a lot of companies that are lining up to help solve that problem for us.
Great, thanks. Glad you're back up online. General Beeler, if I may, over to you. An audience member would like to know, do you believe the current technological level of the maneuver instrumented live training, both air, maritime, and land, and their integration is enough to show the real combat capability of our armed forces?
Yeah, so thanks. That's a great question. I think we collectively believe that the answer is no. As we think through our modernization of our live portfolio, we have a program out there called Synthetic Training Environment Live Training System, so STLTS. And we're investing in several areas for sensors, transport layer to enable the exercise, the ability to instrument out not just the equipment and the soldier in the field, but really how do we bring that equipment and soldier into the simulation? So if, for example, a soldier fires their weapon, in that bullet ends up in the simulation, travels through the simulation, is able to be calculated on the far end and determine and adjudicate what has occurred on the battlefield, and how does that replicate itself back in the system. So when you have force on force exercises, you can see what has happened. We're in the process of right now, we've got our middle tier acquisition authority, OTAs, out there to develop many. We got 12 technologies we're tracing. We're recently are seeking to, and we've prototyped, stingers. We've prototyped grenades. Now we've prototyped mortars, things that have never been brought into the live system, and what occurs in the field now is replicated in the system and can actually generate kill in that space. Same thing with autonomous threat or autonomous friendly. If you have a drone flying over and it drops ordnance, other than somebody walking up to you to say, hey, you're dead, we're now able to look at GPS wise in the system and in the terrain who would have been affected by the most likely outcome of ordnance or EW or some other capability being replicated in that particular drone. And so, there are things that are ready that we think we're going to do some rapid fielding on relatively soon, we hope. And then there are things that we're still working on, directed energy, EW. How do we replicate that stuff in the simulation that then drives action on the battlefield for both Blue and Red 4? And then how does generative AI, again, fill in the gaps for those things that we can't necessarily replicate in one of our training centers, but would absolutely be available to a brigade commander or a division commander or a corps commander as they're maneuvering in that space. So thanks for the question.
That's pretty exciting. That's going to be a hell of a synthetic environment when we can integrate all of that in with all those different weapon systems and their effects. Very, very exciting. Hey, let me turn over back to the Air Force. Colonel Quinones, I saw two questions here that seem to be somewhat related, so I'm going to ask both of them to you. The audience wants to know, what is your must-see at ITSEC? And then not only your must-see, but what else is on your priority list that you hope to get out of the conference next month?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I will tell you that there's in my mind, there's three things that I'm hoping to get out of the conference. Number one, I look forward to hear senior leaders' perspective across all the services on where training is going, because I think we can learn from each other and we actually can see where synergies are, so we can continue to work together as we bring training solutions forward. So that's a big part of that. So there's a lot of great panels that I think is going to bring a lot of light into where the services are going and how we can work together, but also industry can then listen to those conversations and also help us kind of map out the best way to get to those solutions. I also look forward to talk to industry. I think is one of the it's a great venue to see where the innovation is happening, and to see what industry is bringing forward, to see what is in the realm of the possible. Then they allow us to then start kind of putting a roadmap together and how integrate some of those technologies into the solutions that we're seeking. We do not create solutions. We are acquirers. We are highly dependent on our partners on the industry side to push those technologies, to make those developments, and then we can then find ways to incorporate those into what we do. So I think that is a big piece of what I'm looking forward to see that. And third, I just looked at it's a great opportunity for the crosstalk that we do in terms of industry, government, and academia, in terms of what is next, where's the research is going, where the technologies are going, beyond just in the next 3 to 5 years, but looking downfield and what is the next big item that we should be looking at and we should be paying attention to. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to make these exchanges. We are bringing all our divisions down to include our aircraft division and others, because we want that interaction between industry and our service and the other services. We're bringing the full contingent to ensure that we get the max conversation going between all the different stakeholders to be able to then leverage and move forward into future capabilities. Over.
That's awesome. I hope we have the same type of interest from our other services too, as you've just described how many folks you're going to have coming down. I think it's very worthy. Hey, I'm not sure we still have Colonel Klopstein with us, but Colonel, if you're still dialed in, I'd like to ask one more question for the Space Force. You're new in your role. I'm sure you have, but the audience would like to know, have you identified any training gaps? And if you have identified those training gaps, have you already begun to move out to close them? How are you addressing the gaps that you see? Over.
Yes, sir. So I think the biggest training gap is ensuring that we can train across our systems and understand how our systems are affecting each other, and ensure that we maintain the kill chain and the mission threads that we know that we contribute to for the joint force. And so understanding how, let's say a PNT system interacts with an orbital warfare system and connecting them across the C2 chain, we have not been able to do that yet. We've done most of our training specific to a system. And so that's probably the biggest training gap that we have as a force. Specifically, the training systems that we have right now that we've built have been underfunded historically. And so the level of fidelity of those training systems is probably not to the level that we need them to be. And so that's probably the other biggest gap from a Space Force standpoint that we need to address is how do we make sure that our training systems are, upgraded to the level of fidelity that we know that we need to validate our tactics across these systems and ensure that, we're working together the right way. And so I'd say those are probably the two biggest things. What we're trying to do right now, as far as moving out to address them, is number one, defining the digital environment that these training systems are going to have to be integrated into and interact in. And number two, leveraging whatever capabilities we have right now and building upon them as quickly as possible. I think there's going to be, a near-term effort to deliver distributed training capabilities as fast as possible to support our Space Force generation from Space Operations Command. But then there's probably going to be also a longer-term effort to be able to build out, what we think is an enduring synthetic environment that will, build up to that Heat 3 environment and advanced training that we know we need for the Space Force.
Colonel, are you already engaged in discussions with people that are beginning to be responsive to that gap that you've identified?
Yes, sir. In multiple forums, we've had a few industry days looking at synthetic environments and digital models. We've also looked across the DoD to see what systems are out there, and our team is building the acquisition strategy that will support that. They're working that right now. I think early next year, we'll be able to go out to industry and give a lot more detail on what we think that longer term approach is and how we think industry can fit into that long-term plan.
Awesome. We look forward to our follow-on events next late winter and spring to hear how you define that and allow a little bit better understanding of what your need is so they can try to help you. Back over to Captain James with the Navy. Captain James, we've got a lot of small business that's registered for this year's ITSEC, both on the exhibit floor and just attending as registrants. The question was, how are small businesses already engaged with you in your initiatives for the Navy? And if they're not engaged and they want to be, how can a small business team up with you and get into the fight to help you?
Yes, sir. I'd like to start with the last part first. So we've got an outstanding small business office. So Leslie Faircloth is our director of small business. If you don't know her, she's easy to find on every kind of social media, as well as the Tech Grove director, Aaron Baker. The two of them, if you know them, you know everybody. So I start off with, if you're new to this ecosystem, regardless if you're working Navy or any of the other services, they are resources you need to know. Talk to them. They're very used to helping people walk through all the different, SAM.gov or all the different registrations and criteria you got to keep up to date, et cetera. So please reach out for them. They will be at ITSEC, but they will be slammed. So they'll get back to you if you're not already on their list. For the beginning part, is small business involved in our initiatives? Yes, they're involved in every single thing that we can get them involved with, because now that we're trying to really be a data-driven organization, it is easy to see when you look at the metrics and the stats that small business is where we make our money. That's our most responsive, our most on time, our cheapest, our most creative type of group is that small business. And whenever we can run competition, that doubles down on that. So our number one tenet when we look at any act strategy is, can this be a small business competitive effort? If not, then we start, okay, maybe it has to go to a big because of a data right issue, or it has to go maybe an 8A because that's where it's been before, et cetera. But 100% small business, we love them to death. Unfortunately, we'll award some of these small so much they become medium or large businesses. But I guess that's a good way to thrive in the small business ecosystem. But please reach out to my office or to Leslie or to Aaron to get involved, because that is our number one goal, is to get more small business involved.
Hey, for those that may not have caught her name, why don't you say it one more time so people can take a note?
Yes, sir. So our director of small business is Leslie Faircloth, and the Tech Grove director is Aaron Baker. And if you got in touch with one of them, you've got in touch with both of them. They're at the hip. So please reach out either through our public-facing website, through the Tech Groves, or on LinkedIn, Facebook, et cetera. They're easy to find.
That's good stuff. Thanks for repeating that. That's important. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go to the Marine Corps for our last question of this webinar. Back to Colonel Reynolds. Colonel, I want to kind of add to the discussion that I had on your first question to you about Project Tripoli. With the Marine Corps' Project Tripoli coming around, how do you see the future of all services seamlessly connecting their simulations and C5I equipment for joint training events with the Marine Corps? Over.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the questions. As we expand our connections for Project Tripoli and our efforts, I think that that our vision to actually fully integrate training across the MAGTF elements and with our sister services, that will basically be like an example that other services can use. But also for us, as we transition over to partner with the JSJ7 and start using the joint tools, then that really is a roadmap for all of us to work together already. And we've already started discussions down here at Team Orlando as how can we, better inform the JSJ7 of our needs, and also inform them of the gaps that are already there. And so I think that as we move forward, that we'll be able to expand our connections, because we're already doing it with the Navy, but we can start to expand our connections with the Air Force, Space Force, and the Army. Over.
And that, as we know, that's going to be a really important thing to do, because in the future, actually, in our current day right now, we have so much of a joint fight going on. So we need to be sure we can ensure that we can train jointly also. Thanks for that response. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, that takes me to my closing remarks for our webinar. I'd like to sincerely thank our service leadership for participating today. Y'all's time is very, very valuable. That's not lost on me. And the entire audience appreciates you dialing in and giving us this sneak preview of what we can hope to get out of ITSEC 2024 next month. I'd also like to remind everyone to register for ITSEC. So it's early in November. We're about 4 weeks out. We'd love to encourage you to register and come down. As you know, it's going to be held from the 2nd to the 6th of December in Orlando, Florida at the Orange County Convention Center. So as the president of NTSA, I look forward to meeting many of you throughout that week. I too am new, like a couple of our service executives today, and I will do my best to work the floor and introduce myself to as many of you all as possible. Thanks again. Out here today. See you soon.